Welcome back to Indie Cult Horror. Guys, we're in the countdown mode. These are the last few episodes. We have 4 interviews left and a wrap-up. So, yeah, the end is near. But let's not skip over some of these great ones before we finish. 2004, Horrorfind Weekend was all about George Romero. He was the guest of honor. There were many actors and behind-the-scenes people from his films on hand that weekend, and it was a great time. Romero himself was having a really good time meeting the fans. He was very talkative with everybody. He kind of invited most of us up to Canada to be zombies. But apparently there's like a law against that in Canada. You can't bring, zombie hordes from United States. Yeah, who knew? So, unfortunately, I did not get to be a zombie, and I did not get to do a full-fledged interview with Romero that weekend. But I did get some other cool people. So, first of those people was Scott Reiniger. So, Roger from Dawn of the Dead. That's pretty great. He is an amazing character. He is kind of the counterpart to Peter, Ken Foray's character, who are kind of, to me, the heart of the film, the two of them. We see the SWAT team guys who quickly bond and become best friends through this experience together. And of course, transformation, as you watch him slowly become a zombie, is pretty amazing and one of the greatest feats of Savini's career. So it was amazing to get a chance to talk to Scott Reiniger. Also, of course, he's one of the Knights and Knightriders, another favorite of mine, and he has a great cameo in the Dawn of the Dead remake. So definitely part of the Romero family, and I was really happy to get this opportunity. I'll give you a quick anecdote, though. Reiniger's a very early riser kind of guy, and when I asked him to do an interview, he said, okay, well, meet me here first thing tomorrow before they open the convention. So we get down there, he's like, oh, but I gotta have a smoke, so why don't we do the interview outside? My husband asked him, sure, while we're setting up, would you like coffee, a tea, anything like that? And he's like, I haven't had a chance to have any breakfast yet. If you just want to pick something up for me from the cafeteria, and I'll pay you back. We were like, no big deal, we'll take care of it. But when my husband gets to the restaurant in the hotel, like most hotels that have conventions in them, breakfast is a buffet. And he had no idea what the hell Scott Reiniger would want for breakfast. So he kind of asks for one of everything and has a few waitresses help him out bringing it to the table when we finish the interview. So probably garnered a little extra attention from the convention staff that weekend, accidentally. But Reiniger definitely had plenty of things to choose from for his breakfast. All that aside, it was an awesome interview. I'm really happy that I was able to get that chance, and I hope you enjoy this interview from 2004 with Scott Reiniger.
It's alright. If you could just introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Scott Reiniger. I play Roger in Dawn of the Dead.
What was your acting experience before working on Dawn?
Well, I was a classical stage actor in New York, and I was trained in the American Stanislavski Theater, and also at the Actors Studio and Circle Repertory. So my dream was to be a classical stage actor, and I was working off-Broadway and off-Broadway, doing some regional theater, outside of New York. And Dawn of the Dead was my first film. The only thing I had done before that was a commercial, which was film. It was a commercial for Stouffer's Foods, and I played a mad conductor. My hair was standing straight up. I was in a tuxedo, and it was kind of wild, lots of music.
How did you find out about Dawn and get involved in it?
How did I find out about Dawn? George came to New York to cast the principals, and I happened to know his wife, Chris, and Chris and I went to college together in the theater department together. So she suggested that I audition for him. And so one thing led to the next,
Had you seen Night of the Living Dead beforehand?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I saw it. Actually, I remember my impression when I saw it was, I knew it was a movie, but it was so documentary and it was black and white. And a thought went through my mind was, did this actually happen? I actually literally had that thought.
Had you been a fan of horror movies beforehand?
Not really. I like them, you know what I mean? And, if they're really well done, I didn't necessarily follow them, And, I loved being in Dawn of the Dead, of course. It totally surprises me it's still so popular. It's like it's almost a miracle.
Working on the project, it was like an ensemble cast. How was that kind of an experience on working on your first film?
It was great because the pace was quick, but the atmosphere was very relaxed. And George is very relaxed to work with. He's very efficient. He knows what he's doing. So There's not a lot of stress on the set, and we just fortunately just naturally got along with each other. You know, we knew we were doing a film that was rather unusual. You know, so we sort of bonded around that idea. You know, because we all had that sense of, well, this is an unusual film, and God knows what anyone's going to think. You know, so, and then when we found out it was going to be not rated, we went, oh, well, that's probably going to cause some big-time controversy in the press, you know, which it did.
And there were a lot of obstacles and specific challenges with this kind of a film. I mean, you were working with the mall, which is an unusual environment. You had tons of stunt work, fight choreography, special effects. What out of all of it was probably the most challenging aspect?
Challenging it for me or for in general?
For you.
For me? Probably the most challenging aspect, actually, the truth, is being up all night and having our days flipped around, because we started shooting exteriors first, and then we went into the mall. I don't recall exactly how long we were in the mall, but we were inside at least a month, so we slept during the day and we worked all night, and it was like being in the Twilight Zone. You know, so I would have to, you know, get up and exercise and really be awake, so I was really alert. You know, by the time I got to the set, makeup and costumes, so I could be really alert, really sharp. You know, not sleepy. You know, and then you know, prep and study the scenes that I'm about to do. So that was actually the most challenging. Oh no, there's one other thing.
Okay.
Driving the VW in the mall. That made me very nervous.
Was that a vehicle that was owned by the crew, or was that like a prop that just happened to be in the mall?
That's a good question. As far as I recall, I think that car, I may be wrong about this, but I think that car was in the mall. And I think it was either they rented it from the dealership or paid them a fee or whatever they did. You know? And that was, because I have this funny memory of actually seeing the car in the mall when we first got there. I don't know, maybe I'm imagining that. It was a while ago.
Well, speaking of driving, how was it with the scene with the Mack trucks?
That was okay, because the funny thing is, now, driving down the hill, when they come down the hill, I didn't drive them down the hill. Mm-hmm. We did the, the pull-ups, and the backups, and the close shots and all of that. That was not a problem for me, because when I was a teenager, I used to work for tree companies to make money, right? And so, and we would, cut down trees and move them all up, and then I would have to sometimes drive this truck, and these are like really large trucks, so it really wasn't an issue.
You had a couple of special effects sequences that with appliances directly on you. There were the bite scenes, and then there was the scene in the car when you're in the back, and then there was the transformation scene. How was it working with the Savini and the effects sequences you had to be part of?
That was fun, actually. I just thought that was pretty novel. Savini's just a funny character. He's a funny guy. He's fun to work with, and he has such a buoyant energy. And I was very fascinated by how he was doing it, because it was low budget, but actually make it work, and make all the makeup work. It's quite fascinating. Like in the last scene, when I come back again, when he didn't use any prosthetics, or latex or anything. What he did is he put this tissue on my face. I don't quite know what it was, and I remember it being somewhat moist. And then he would take a hairdryer and he would dry it on my face, and what we would do was just shrink my skin. And he did that layer after layer after layer, and it just gradually would shrink my skin like that. He would create all these lines and whatnot, and I don't still look like that. I hope not. Okay. And then he did the makeup. He applied the makeup on top of that. As I recall, it took about an hour and a half.
It's not too bad.
Yeah. It may be longer, but that's my memory of it anyway.
When everything was said and done and you saw the finished film, how did you feel about the result?
I was actually pretty shocked. Yeah, I mean, in a good way. I mean, I knew the story intimately, of course. I knew every scene of the story. But when I actually I first saw George's cut in Hollywood. It was not the release cut, it was a really long cut. And, when I saw, I had the chills now, because I can remember so vividly. When it got to the point where they blow off the guy's head, I remember I was in the theater and I just went, oh, God. You know, and I knew the story and I knew it was coming. But it's, I went, oh God, who's gonna come see this movie? You know what I mean? At first I went, God, is this movie gonna be good for my career or bad? I'm not quite sure what.
When you finally saw the finished film, was there anything that, in the beginning of the process, reading the screenplay and going over everything, was there anything that at that time didn't seem possible, but in the finished film it came off? Like,
no, not really.
Okay.
Nothing like that occurred to me. No. I knew it was very ambitious, not only with the central characters, but with all the graphic violence and the motorcycles. Some of those motorcycle people were real gang. Yeah, and that was interesting day. There was a lot of buzz on the set about the real gang show. I was very fascinated watching those guys. And then they were mixed with, actors and extras.
they brought their own bikes, right?
They brought their own bikes.
Easy rental.
Yeah, and I think they were cheap. Funny, huh?
With also, in kind of a retrospective, when you see the finished product, when the audience reactions started coming and I guess the reactions from the press and everything, and there was a bit of controversy over the violence, kind of still is.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
At first, I was concerned about it. And then I started to notice that there were so polarized views of the movie. And I thought that was so interesting. Then I started to read, I remember Roger Ebert's review, I'll never forget that, on apocalyptic vision of America. He said, wow, he's really like getting this movie. He was the last person I expected. He was like all over the film. You know what I mean? And then there were others that were very critical of it, and then I started to read these reviews in Europe. There were amazing reviews in Europe because it's about America, so their perspective is a little bit different. You know what I mean? And a lot of amazingly great reviews came out of Europe, Japan, but in the long run, I didn't know how it would settle. My grandmother wanted to come see the movie. I told her no. I just told her, do not come to just another screening. It was a release screening. And she said, I want to come. I said, no, you do not want to come to this movie. She insisted. Well, when they got to the point one day, blew off the guy's head, that was it. She had to leave. So I escorted her out, and I put her in a cab. She said, thank you, dear. That was very nice, but I have to go home now. Cute.
Well, the two of you have a similar threshold then. At the same point.
That was funny. Well, I watch movies like Scream now. They make me wince. It's also because the audio, is so pristine, so the violence, it's awesome. The audio is so enhanced and so intense. Something like that is so sick that it could actually maybe happen versus Dawn of the Dead, it could really happen.
It also helps to have seen the makeup appliances on the set and things like that. Now, you mentioned the international kind of celebrity of the film. I mean, you have people in Italy emulating it. You have people in Japan who are fascinated with it. Even in America, there's like a million rip-offs that happened even in the 70s, let alone the rush of video in the 80s.
Right.
How do you feel about the kind of almost praise of the film and at the same time imitation of it?
I think the praise of the film is great for those people who really get it. People who get it that don't. I don't expect it to appeal to everyone. But in terms of the rip-offs, there's been so many. I haven't seen. Have I seen? I saw one. I don't remember which one it was. I didn't really have a big opinion about it because I knew they couldn't be as original as George's. Somebody could try, but they would never be as original.
What do you think makes it set apart from everything else?
Well, here's what I hear. This is the feedback that I get because I ask people that come up to me because I think fans have a clearer perspective about the movie than I do because I was in it, and I still find it really very kind of almost awesome that the film still has this life and it's more popular today than it ever was, which is incredible. The thing that I hear over and over, along with, it's what's very unusual for its time, has to do with the relationships of the four characters. and against all odds, and that you can actually care for them, right? That's the repetitive thing I hear mostly over and over from people, and that seems to be what hooks people into it. And it seems like people identify with with the sort of apocalyptic, situation, and are able to think of, well, what would they do if they were in such a situation, whether it's zombies or not, something that was so drastic. How would you survive? It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting trait in Romero's films. They feel human. They don't feel
right.
like they're just there to be chased.
Just to be chased, yeah.
Now, after Dawn was finished, you went on also to work on another Romero film with Knightriders.
Oh, Knightriders, yes.
It was also an ensemble cast experience, a lot of the
was.
same people. How was it going straight from one to the next?
It was fun. We had a great time doing that film. It was hot, it was dusty. I had to learn how to ride a motorcycle. When I was in LA, I had a friend who had a motorcycle, so he helped me learn how to. And then, so when I got to the set, then they gave me some dirt bikes. That was a lot of fun riding those dirt bikes. We had a great time doing that. It was like being a child and having fun and playing. And the funny thing about that movie was it rained so much of the time. We had all this time off all the time. And you want to hear a funny anecdote? We were staying at the Ramada Inn, and I can't remember exactly where it was. And the cast and the crew took over the Ramada Inn. I mean, I think almost every room. Maybe not every room, but every day they would have a buffet, like cocktail hour buffet, and they'd have this huge pile of shrimp. It was like enormous. Well, everyone would get back and just devour it. Well, after a few days, they stopped putting out the shrimp. I always thought that was interesting. But we had fun doing that. That was really great. And I met Ed Harris, who went out to do really well. I live in LA, and I know him, so and that was great for him. People have very mixed feelings about that because it's such a drastic divergence from Dawn of the Dead.
I think that's what's great about it, actually.
Yeah.
But again, you're looking at character profiles throughout the entire film. It's real people.
Yes.
So that having been part of that and is not as a primary role in Dawn, did that give you more of an experience to just kind of take in everything that was going on?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I did, because I wasn't as occupied as much. I was there a long time. It must have been about 3 months. And I think in the script, as far as I remember, my role as Marholt actually was, there were more scenes that Marholt and another character that were in, but in the editing process and the storyline, it became less in the final account. Yeah.
So, of the two films together, having worked with the same crew initially and working with Romero both times, would you want to do that again? Would you want to be part of that again?
Well, if it was George,
yeah,
sure. We're friends. Sure, you bet. It would be fun for me.
Is that something kind of like a bonus to going to these type of events? I mean, you get to hang out with all the people that you used to work with every day.
Oh yeah, that's really fun because I haven't been able to do it too often. You mean these kind of events?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw Galen for the first time in many years. A few months ago when we did the audio commentary. And so that was the first time all four of us were together face to face. And this is the first convention where all of us are here, including George. That's never happened before. So that's great. Because we get along and make fun of each other all the time. So. And Ken Faree makes fun of me all the time.
Notice that.
He is. He's a bad boy.
So, aside from that angle, I mean, being at conventions and events like this, I mean, how does it feel to interact with the fans of these films?
I'm a very curious person. So I always have been that way. So I'm very curious about people. Like, what is it about the movie that draws them? I tend to ask people questions. So, I've never had anything strange happen. I've only been to maybe 5 conventions, 6 over, 5 years, something like that. It's a world unto itself. There's no doubt about it. The first one I went to, I went, oh my God. I didn't even know about them until a few years ago. I ran into somebody that I was working with, media coaching a politician in Washington, D.C., and it was his assistant, who was a Dawn fan. I came into the office and she went, "Oh my God, it's you, it's you, it's you!" And she started to tell me about conventions. I said, "What conventions?" Because I was focused on my directing. And she said, "What? You don't go to the conventions? Are you nuts?" I said, "I don't know. What are you talking about?" She says, "Come here." And she took me over to the computer and she took me on some of these websites. She said, "You know what's going on out there?" I said, "No, I guess I don't." So she was the one who turned me on to Chiller Theater. Yeah. She said, and I think she actually even made a phone call there to book me on it. So that was my first experience.
I think I was at that convention actually.
What?
I was at that convention the first time you were there.
Yeah.
So after working on these films, I mean, did you go back into theater work mostly?
Well, I'm going to go back to LA. I have a play that I'm going to be doing, and I also coach. I have a coaching practice. I have clients, and I also work with writers. I coach writers in terms of developing their story and how to get over obstacles upstairs. How to write a story.
Any dream projects you haven't been able to do that you want?
I have 4.
4? Like what kind of stuff?
They all have a similar theme, not the same theme. They have mostly very, very different projects, but they all are very life-affirming about what is possible in life, rather than a reflection or a mirror of all this dysfunction that's going on around us. I've always been drawn to that. Most of the plays I've directed have something in one way or another. So 2 are movies and 2 are plays.
Well, thank you for all your time,
Sure.
And
Thank you.
Thanks again for tuning in to Indie Cult Horror, and I will see you next month with another interview. See you later.